So now let's talk about the heat of the discussion. How do we want to invest our money? How do I have everybody in this room invested? Or most people, I would say, all my money is invested in a certain place. So let's talk about keep your clients in a well-diversified portfolio. Well, I would say 99.9% of most money managers do this. And I'm not saying this is not a good idea. What I've argued to you in this room, and I've argued to my clients for many, many years, is does diversification always work? Well, being in this business a long time, one thing I've learned is every time I had a market downturn, my clients lost money. Now, they might have lost less sometimes, maybe not. So diversification does work sometimes, and diversification doesn't work other times. In fact, we'll look at some of these different numbers. 2001, the purple line is 60-40, not as bad. We can see the financial crisis. You know, the 60-40 was down about 38. The general market was down about 50. COVID didn't do great. This, in 2022, 60-40 was a disaster. Pretty much, remember 22, Mike? Okay. Not good. Why? What happened? Well, what happened was, see, the problem with diversification, and I've studied this, I've taught this at the university. What happens with diversification when markets become very volatile, it's like, think about a forest fire. When there's a fire, all the animals move in one direction, Todd. They don't move in different directions. So diversification doesn't work when markets become highly volatile. The second problem is, if I've got bonds in my portfolio and the market's crashing and interest rates are falling, then that means bonds are going up. So think about bonds acting as a parachute to your stock portfolio. Does that make sense, Danny, what I'm saying? Okay, so if an interest rates are on a cycle where the interest rates are going to start to climb, and I do believe Jay Powell will raise interest rates, that's my personal opinion, then that 60-40 is not going to be a good place. That long bond is going to be a bad place to be in. So diversification does make sense, but there's times it doesn't work. You know, one thing I've tried to do in my life, I'm not a very religious, but I do believe in God. And I do believe, and Mike, you and I have had this discussion, I believe that life is about the search for truth in everything I do. Whether it's religion, whether it's investing, whatever I do, whether it's in love. And one thing I've really tried to do is understand the history. Those who do not study it are doomed to repeat it. And when I came to believe that modern portfolio theory was invented in 1952. 1952 isn't exactly modern. That's a 52 Chevy, John. Do you own one of those, John?
57.
You own a 57 Chevy. How many cars do you own, John? About 6 cars. And you rebuild them. You take these and you rebuild them. What a fun hobby. Your life sucks, doesn't it? Okay. All right, so what I really have done as an academic and as a practitioner is I've studied every model, I really wanted to see if I could find the truth in doing my job for everybody in this room. How do I protect your money, Teresa? How do I make sure that you're going to live the rest of your life and not ever worry about money? And so this is all the different improvements of modern portfolio theory that was developed after 1952, Todd, okay? And I've studied everyone. I've taught everyone in these models, and they don't work. And in fact, the last one, Garsh, which was basically came to be in 2003, Dr. Engels, PhD, won the Nobel Prize for Garsh. And I remember Marty, you guys remember Marty. He got an obscene job working at B of A, which I'm very proud of. And I'm excited for him. But bottom line was, this individual invented basically a model that said, I can predict volatility. And if you can predict volatility, Kathleen, what that means is I can make sure my portfolios are always proper, diversified. Because if I can't predict volatility, that's when diversification doesn't work. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So he basically came up with a model to predict diversification. So, to predict volatility. So I said, Marty, I want you to spend 6 months and I need to use this in our portfolios. 6 months goes by, he goes, Tom, I can't get it to work. So he calls me, this is funny, so Marty calls me about 6 months ago, he goes, Tom, you won't believe this. At Bank of America, they want me to work on Garsh. And I told him it doesn't work. So come around full circle. Do you go to cash? Do you go to cash? I've been getting calls from clients. Dom, take all my money, I need to go to cash. Mike, you went to cash. We had a conversation. Dom, I don't feel good, I went to cash. On some of your money, not all your money. Not with me, but with your other account. So, do you go to cash? Well, the problem with cash is, number one, they lie about inflation. And I've talked about this in my lectures. In 1980, if you use the formula for calculating the depreciation of money, which we call inflation today would be, 12, 13%. So let's assume inflation's running at 7%. One of my really good friends' wife is afraid of the market. She says, all I need is $2,000 a month. She just retired. All I need is $2,000 a month, Michelle. $2,000 a month and my Social Security, and I can live the rest of my life. I said, no, you can't, because in 20 years, your $2,000 a month today is only going to buy $500 worth of goods in 20 years. Because at 7.2, money depreciates every 10 years, half its value, the rule of 72. So can you live on $500 a month plus your Social Security? Absolutely not. She's going to be in a park bench. That's the problem with cash. You don't keep up with the devaluation of capital. Does that make sense? Have I lost you yet, young lady? Okay, that's a good thing. Teresa, you're looking perplexed. Because we're having a quiz after this, okay? Or you don't eat. Or got a bottle, okay? So cash is not an investment strategy. However, Sharon, I'm going to be totally transparent. What if you were in the market in the 1929 crash? These are the numbers. These are the numbers. At the bottom of the market, $1 million is $200,000. So guess what? Being in cash is a heck of a lot better than being in the market. Sharon, right? So you take your retirement, and next thing you know, you call your broker and you're down to 200. Where's the window? Right? And then when do you get out? That's kind of interesting. What's the pain point? You got $1 million, then a year later it's worth $830. Do you say, I got to get out? Or do you get out at $549? Or Sharon, do you get out at $260? When do you go to cash? When is uncle? Right? So I understand it. I understand when I get a call from one of my clients says, Dom, just take me to cash. Okay. I'm not going to argue with that. That's assuming you make 5% a year. Now, how about this one? How about I could time the market? I got another good friend. He says, oh, I'm really good at timing the market. Okay, really? Because you know what, guys? I've been doing this a long time. I'm going to pick the 4 greatest money managers over the last 20, 30 years. Okay, here you got Elaine Gazzarelli. She predicted the 87 crash. She then proceeded to tell us that the municipal bond market was going to crash and get out of municipal bonds. She was fired by Lehman Brothers. How about this guy, Bill Gross, the greatest bond guru of all times, and he predicted that interest rates were going to spike in 2011, and he got fired. How about this one? This is the best one. This guy was nominated the best money manager of the century. Now, I'm talking like 1900 to 1999. That's 100 years. He beat the S&P for 15 years in a row. 15 years in a row. And guess what? He then proceeded to 5 years in a row lose 50%. And he got fired. How about this guy? Anybody know who this is? Alan Greenspan. When I was on Wall Street, now where I worked, it was people as far as you could see. And when he got on the TV screen, the floor went quiet. Because God is speaking. And God was full of shit. Excuse my vernacular. God was full of shit. He's the one that caused the oil crisis with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. He was, but if you want to argue this point, we will. There's a documentary I give my students called The Warning. Have you seen The Warning, Vinny? Okay, part of it. Okay, good. Okay, so anyway, here's the deal, guys. What is he going to do? Because if this market is going to do bad things, I believe if he stays convicted, If he stays convicted, well, he's already convicted. Come on, he's already Freudian slip over here. If he stays the course, let's talk. I love this slide because we're studying history. This is 2018, 2019. So he starts putting in tariffs in the middle of 18, and when they kick in, the market drops, and then he backs off, and then the end of 19 he puts in tariffs, the market drops, and then he backs off. He starts carve-outs. He says, well, auto company, I'll tell you what, you're exempt from any tariffs because any of your suppliers. That's backing off. Well, here's what's interesting. I don't know if you, ladies and gentlemen, remember this. The market dropped almost 20%. So what I'm reading from economists, what I'm reading from the right and the left is, this market comes down about 15, 20% because he watches the stock market. Marlon, he watches the stock market. Todd, he is going to back off. He's going to start saying, and you know, what Trump does really well is he declares victory and then even though, you know, oh yeah, we won, so we're going to back off the tariffs. So let's hope that happens. But I am not going to invest your life savings on a hope. I'm not going to do that.